This is the Podcast Express, and we're talking to whoever's listening out there. Welcome to 5 Minutes of Trouble, the only podcast on the internet that previously discussed the John Carpenter film Big Trouble in Little China, 5 minutes at a time. I'm Josh Horowitz from the Wing Kong Exchange.
And I'm your previous co-host, who's still your co-host, Brett Stillo here. And Josh, we've turned the Podcast Express into the podcast library.
It seems so.
Yes, indeed. If you folks could only see us, we're pulled over by the side of Highway 99. We're in smoking jackets. We have pipes. And that's all we do now. It's movies by minutes. It's over.
Yes, well, we're adding an instance of culture for our fans out there.
And
yes. In the form of these two great coffee table books, of which we've already spoken about one of them.
Yes. And once again, I mean, we're not being paid for this. This is us just saying, hey, these are two darn good books. And yeah, the first one we covered was The Making of Big Trouble in Little China.
That's right.
And now we're going to talk about the art of Big Trouble in Little China.
Yes, also by Tara Bennett and Paul Terry, published by Boom Studios, which is the same people who do the comic book series for Big Trouble in Little China. And this is a beautiful book, just like the other one. Big glossy hardcover, about 175 pages. And this one is more, well, obviously by the title, it's more about the art. It covers a lot of stuff having to do with costume and production design for the film. And then it devotes an entire section to some of the stuff that is the art inspired by the film. So sort of the modern day version of Big Trouble in Little China in the form of the comic book stuff, some collectible art, including some of the new toys.
Yeah. I got to admit, when I got these books, I was initially more drawn to the making of, because in a sense, it paralleled our show. It talked about, as I recall, the making of sort of takes a chronological look at the movie, and it just covers everything we covered. Trans Ams and Eskimo glasses and the whole thing. So it took me a few readings to get into the art of Big Trouble in Little China, but it's a great book too, and it sort of takes a different course. I think what's cool about it is it looks at, if you will, big trouble culture.
Yeah.
And how this movie is affecting pop culture today, and how this movie was influenced by pop culture.
Yeah, and how it's influenced so many of the talented artists out there who have done so much new Big Trouble art for the comic books, and for even there's a novelization that they mention in here. We'll get to that at the end. But yeah, lots of influence that this film has had on people, and it's neat to see what people have come up with.
True, and how it has. I'm trying to think of a good word, but how it's weevilled. Is weevilled good? It's weevilled its way into culture. It's kind of like a Jerry Porter word. It's weevilized its way into our culture.
In a rucksuckle manner, yes.
In a rucksuckle kind of way. It's done those things in a real rumpus.
Yes.
And it's in a way it also looks at Big Trouble in Little China sort of past, present, and future. Mm-hmm. The past is it goes into really the pre-production design, and with people who we've been talking about from the beginning, John Lloyd and April Ferry and all those good people, and it just shows the look of the movie in its most raw form, as sketches, which is pretty cool.
It's interesting. When I first got, I got both books at the same time, pretty much, and I was very excited about the making of, just because I was a lot more familiar with all the stuff associated specifically with the film, and I hadn't actually read the comic book series. I've since read kind of like the first couple of issues, and it's awesome stuff. But at the time, I was a little hesitant to pick this one up because I wasn't as familiar with sort of where the characters have gone and stuff. But for any of the people out there who may be in the same boat, don't let that stop you from looking at this art book, because some of the stuff that you're going to see in these pages are just great. I mean, you're going to see some things where you've got artwork of Henry Swanson where he rips open his jacket, revealing the Fu Manchu tank, and you've got some just really, really varied type of art that's just fun to look at. It's just a very fun book.
Yeah. Very fun. And confession time, I still need to pick up some of those comic books. I've definitely been to bookstores and kind of thumbed through them, and yeah, very eye-catching graphics, but I really need to dive in. Again, not that we're being paid by Boom Comics. They really are carrying the torch for this movie and doing a great job of it. You know, it's people who love this movie, and they're really doing it justice. So it's summertime as we're recording this. So I think I know my summer reading, and it's going to involve Jack Burton.
And there's a lot of episodes too. I mean, they were doing this for, I think over 2 years. They started in 2015 with some of the stuff by Eric Powell, and it's a lot of fun. Just sort of digging into the book a little bit, I figured one way we can do this is kind of chronologically. We'll give you guys a little bit of a taste of what you're going to find in this book, but obviously you'll want to go and get it yourself so you can really delve into what this book has to offer. Yeah, exactly. You know, one thing that struck me about the art of Big Trouble in Little China and all this great pre-production sketches and drawings and diagrams and storyboards, it's interesting. I feel oftentimes when you look at all that pre-production material, you see two movies. You see the original, very raw idea of what the movie was going to look like, and then the actual movie. Classic example, I think, is those great pre-production bits of art from the Star Wars trilogy, in particular, Mr. Ralph McQuarrie. There's the George Lucas Star Wars, which we love, but there's this Ralph McQuarrie Star Wars that we kind of speculate and wonder about. Oh, look at that Millennium Falcon. Look at that Darth Vader. That's a little different. I'm going on a tangent here. But I think when you look at all the art from Big Trouble, it really does look like the same movie. There's the transformation from paper to screen is very complete. Yeah, no, definitely. There's some scenes, especially when they start showing kind of the costume design by April Ferry, and they make a couple of sketches of what they think that the characters are going to look like. It kind of has that Ralph McQuarrie-esque alternate reality version of the film, but it's a lot closer, I think, than some of the things that you see there. Yeah. Lo Pan is a little different. I mean, the costume is pretty much it. I think maybe the only significant difference is when they start showing some of the storms. And Thunder, for instance, was originally envisioned as being some sort of like a sumo type character, sort of big, heavy guy. And when they went with Carter Wong, he's more solid. But from what you see in some of these sketches of what the character design is supposed to look like, it's a bit more inflated. And that's a good word for Thunder, isn't it? Inflated.
Funny you should mention that. Yeah. We have a sample of the storyboard of Thunder's demise, which we speculated on at great length. And you see it does give some clue that it looks as though, Thunder just lost control. He just, because I think there's a note, he suddenly drops his knife as if he can't hold it because he can't hold it anymore. His fingers are fat. Right. So, yeah, I mean, again, we talked about this in the last episode. It fills a lot of gaps about things we wondered and speculated on. It's like, oh, that's why they did it.
Well, one of the first things that I noticed when I was going through this, there's a whole section where they talk about just what's called the Big Trouble in Little China aesthetic. And they make a note that Carpenter's sort of color palette for Big Trouble was something that is actually the same thing as Culture Club's song Karma Chameleon, red, gold, and green. That was the color palette.
Yep. Okay. And red, gold, and green.
Yeah, you do see quite a bit of those colors throughout. But yeah, that was something I thought of when we were going through that.
I'll just go on record though as saying I like Big Trouble in Little China a lot more than Karma Chameleon.
Or Culture Club for that matter.
Culture Club in itself, never really big into them, but on the whole they were okay. But that song in particular. There's an extra hell. There's an extra Chinese. There's the hell of bad pop songs, and comma, 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 chameleon, just over and over like that. Just that's, yeah, the hell of bad pop songs. Bad 80s pop songs.
I remember hearing that song a lot during the 80s, and it wasn't until years later that I actually realized that they were saying Karma Chameleon. I just thought it was like, come on, come on, come on.
Yeah, same here. Comma, 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 chameleon. Yeah, me too. Me too. But yeah, I could just never got into that song. On a side note, did you remember when that song came out? Were you snapping your fingers to that one?
That must have been mid 80s or 84, something like that.
Yeah, around there. 83, I think 84.
I just remember it on the radio a lot.
Yeah, your young ears may not have been attuned to pop culture at that time, so I understand. But anyway, I digress.
That's okay.
Thank you. I won't do it anymore. I'll just stay right on the subject.
No, this whole podcast is all about fun digressions and seeing where we can go with this stuff. So
exactly. So when are we going to start talking about Guardians of the Galaxy 2?
Oh, I haven't seen that movie yet.
Oh.
Actually, I hate to say it, I haven't seen Guardians of the Galaxy 1 either.
All right. Since we're here, did you have is there a reason?
Parenthood.
Okay.
Just can't go out to see new movies anymore.
I see.
I think the last major film I saw was probably I saw the Avengers movie. That was a big deal. I was actually able to go out. I mean, other than that, it's like movies with kids. I think I saw the Finding Dory movie that was out, and we saw Sing, another animated one, which is actually pretty good. But I haven't seen any of these major ones. I guess they're on Netflix now, right?
You could do that. You can do the Netflix. I don't know if Guardians one is on, or Amazon Prime, $2.99. Right. And that reminds me, those guys at the Princess Bride Minute still owe me $2.99.
They still owe you for that.
They were going to send me a check. We talked about it off air, and promises were made, and here I am.
Well, did they say that the check was in the mail?
No. It's embarrassing. I don't think I remember to use that line. You need a new co-host, man. I'm letting you down.
Nah.
But anyway, hi to Steve and
Jonathan.
Yeah. It's late. Sorry, Jonathan. Hi, you guys. Forget about the $2.99. Just let it roll.
They just did a pretty good job on the Indiana Jones Minute. They just finished.
They were really good.
Yeah, their all-star week over there.
Yeah.
So it's cool to hear those guys there.
With our three good friends on the Indiana Jones Minute, Larry, Dave, and Mike. Yeah, that's I'm just totally dropping names. Not name dropping, just dropping names. I can't remember anybody.
I think there's a Marcus in there somewhere, isn't it?
Yeah, there is a Marcus, actually. Yeah, that's true. I remember there is a Marcus, so I'm not making a joke about Marcus Brody. As we drift further, we're on an iceberg flow.
Yeah, we'd better get back into the book here.
The Eskimos are waving at us. We're gonna have fun editing this one.
Yeah. But yeah, no. Going back to the book, then they have a whole major section on costume design, and this is where we get to revisit our friend April Ferry, who did some of the wonderful costumes for Big Trouble in Little China. This was her first role as doing costume design. She later went on to do stuff for shows like Rome, as well as Game of Thrones, and so she's quite established in the industry. But I noticed that in this book, and they interview her a lot, as well as the cast always seems to have high praise for everything that she did for this film, including John Carpenter specifically, noting that he was very happy with April Ferry.
Yeah, well, you think about specifically a costume like Lopan's robes.
Oh yeah.
And it just looks great on screen. And again, you see a sketch of what it looks like, and it's pretty much the original vision matches the final product.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what's neat on this one is that in addition to showing the sketches, and I guess this is something that they did back in the 80s, don't know if they still do it, but in addition to the sketch, they show you little swaths of cloth that they have as ideas for what's going to be on the costume. And from what I was reading in there, apparently she got all of her inspiration and her fabrics from a store in Chinatown in Los Angeles. And that turned into all the great costumes you see in the film.
Perfect. Really is perfect. But yeah, so yeah, we've talked before about Big Trouble in Little China being a cinematic comic book in colors of red, gold, and green.
Yes.
With a glowing neon aura behind it.
Mm-hmm.
But you see that comic book aesthetic, again, in the pre-production sketches and the artwork. They really knew what they were doing from the outset.
Yeah. I mean, here was an instance where it was a John Carpenter big budget film, and they were doing all they could to make sure that this was going to be the best possible type of show, and it really does show in some of these costume designs.
I think secretly they all knew the movie would flop at the box office, but they knew that if they did a good job, they would be remembered for ages to come. And now here we are over 30 years later.
I wonder about that. Do you think that they went in thinking that it was gonna maybe not do as well as they'd hoped, but just kind of giving it their all anyway?
Oh gosh, I would imagine any project like this, you get so caught up in it.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably thinking this is going to be absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
It does seem that in these books, Carpenter has an inkling because, working with Fox and the publicity and just, he seemed to have a bad sense of where it was going.
Yeah. Well, maybe near the end, at least. I can just from seeing some of the stuff in the art, though, and just all the high praise that everybody has. I mean, I think that they really did hope this thing was going to do very well. And,
oh yeah.
They thought this was going to possibly be the next big blockbuster. I seem to remember that there was some sort of an interview that they gave to Kurt Russell at one point, where the interviewer was saying, "So, Mr. Russell, how does it feel to be the next big blockbuster star?" This was prior to the movie coming out. So they probably had very high hopes, and I'm sure it was very, very disappointing, at least during the box office run. But seeing that these books are still out here, I mean, it's a testament to the fact that it didn't die. I mean, how many other movies from 30 years ago get this type of treatment and have such a passionate audience?
Exactly. Indeed.
So let me see some more little nuggets about the costume design that I have here.
Sure.
They make a note about the Storm's distinctive straw hats. And as we know from before, the whole look came from the Baby Cart series and what was the assassin?
Shogun Assassin.
Right. And so they definitely wanted to have these distinctive straw hats. And from what I read in the book, they were created by commissioning Mexican artisans from a store in Los Angeles who were really good at weaving these organics, these hats. But at the time, this was in 1985, the Mexico City earthquake hit. And so the people who were making these hats, they had to go back to Mexico to visit their families. And so there was a big delay in when the hats were made.
Just as a side note, this is the kind of stuff I love in that in the backdrop of a movie is actual history. There's an event going on.
Yeah, real life.
Real life is happening in the background. We don't see any of this. But, we were working on this movie, and then World War II started.
Yes, post-production was delayed by a couple of months.
Yeah, exactly. So, there's, of course, now I can't think of another example. Although we were talking earlier about the Northridge earthquake, I'm sure there were more than a few productions that were shaken up by the Northridge earthquake.
Oh, in 94, yeah.
Yeah.
94. Well, let's see here. Going back to some of the other costume stuff. Did you ever wonder what the deal was with the chest plate on Lightning? The fact that it had this kind of metallic diamond chest plate.
No. But, since you bring it up, I'd love to hear about the chest plate.
Yeah, well, they answer it. So apparently that design was because it was supposed to represent how lightning could summon and conduct electricity. And so he has this kind of metallic looking thing on his chest plate to help, I guess, augment his lightning powers.
I love it.
The things you hear in this book.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
And, with these podcasts we do, we're always asking, why did he do that? That didn't make sense. How come he went through the window when he didn't try the lock on the door? And you know what? A lot of times they're one or two steps ahead of us, and they're thinking, hey, yeah, let's have this device on Lightning's armor that actually, acts as a lightning rod. So that's how he gets it.
They're thinking, somebody's out there and thinking about all these things. There's a reason behind it all.
And
that's cool.
Yeah. And you can explain it in 3 words: magic breastplate.
There you go. That's pretty much all I saw for having to do with the costumes. They have a whole section afterwards that discusses your friend John J. Lloyd when they talk about production design.
Well, your friend and mine, John J. Lloyd. And when you see again some of his sketches, you see some of the Chinese characters that he's drawing, and you see that I was seeing some of those like comic and cartoony elements. Mm-hmm. He wasn't trying to get it refined. There was a little bit of a loose line there, a flourish. So, and then you see his very structured architectural like diagrams of some of the sets.
Yeah, so much detail that they put into all of this. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. But again, that shows. I mean, back when in the middle of our show, we were always raving about the sets.
Mm-hmm.
And when I definitely appreciate the sets more when I see all the ink and paper used to get everything plotted out. And, reading an excerpt of the book from Dean Cundy, the great cinematographer, just talking about, he and Lloyd looking over those diagrams and plotting, how they could make that set look the best, lighting it and things like that. So Team effort.
Yeah, very much a team effort. And there was another very big team effort when it came to creating some of the creatures in this film. They have a whole section where they start talking about some of the stuff done by Boss Film Studios, which helped design such characters as the Chinese Wild Man, the Eyeball Guardian, and the Sewer Demon, or the Bug Monster, as they refer to. Yeah. And we talked at length about the Chinese Wild Man, the Yeren, when we had Kai and Davin on.
Now, actually, that is something where I think maybe some of the early stages of the Wild Man, he actually maybe looked a little scarier. Mm-hmm. The Yeren we all know and love, who looks wonderfully cartoony. Mm-hmm. He's kind of a big boogie monster. And in some of these earlier sketches, he looks not quite so funny.
Yeah.
Not so cute. Not so
pretty
cute.
Fiendish. Yeah.
And it mentions Steve Johnson, creator of these characters. How, before this he worked on Ghostbusters. Mm-hmm. And, it's funny. Like, I think about a character like, say, Slimer, and then I think of the Wild Man, and they both, they both have the crazy smile.
Yeah. No, they've got that kind of beefy, smiley, very thick look to them.
They are very thick monsters.
They are. Though one of the things that they mention in the book is that he specifically made sure that the Wild Man would have thinner, long, wispy hair, so you could see the skin through it for a sort of more visceral effect.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Again, the final product, or the final Yeren, he's a very colorful character. Mm-hmm. And I think the hair helped sell it. And again, in some of the early sketches and models, you don't have that wispy hair, and it's just something that's missing.
Yeah.
A key element that's missing. You put the hair on him, suddenly he becomes this renegade Muppet.
Well, the Chinese Wild Man actually plays a pretty significant role in the comics. And when we get to that section, you get to see sort of a different take on the year, and very much in the positive. It's pretty hilarious, actually.
I like that. I'd like to think that they, he basically becomes Han's Chewbacca, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah.
And I just called Jack Han. Oops.
Well, he did try out, or Kurt Russell did try out for the role.
He did try out, and so it's interesting. We've talked about this before on a number of shows, but Kurt and Harrison, heck, they could have played brothers, I think. Interesting in their acting styles and their physical features. Maybe less so physically. Maybe they wouldn't look like brothers, but they do kind of. They're cut from the same swaggering cloth.
Yeah, no, maybe cousins.
Cousins.
Yeah,
they're cousins. Swagger cloth.
That would be an interesting crossover if they did that in a comic. I mean, they've already done one kind of bizarre version where it was Big Trouble in Little China crossed over with Escape from New York with the same character or the same actor playing two characters. But can you imagine if they did that where it was like Jack Burton in the Star Wars universe along with Han Solo?
That'd be hysterical. I could totally see. Can we get Boom on the horn? I think Jack Burton in space.
Jack Burton in space.
Yeah, this is the it just turned the pork chop into a starship.
Yeah, he would just constantly be saying like, "What the hell am I doing over here?" It's like, "What the hell is that alien?" And that one, and that one.
This isn't right. I might be jumping ahead, but one of my favorite parts of this book was talking about the development of the posters.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we missed the boat here when we did the show. I don't think we talked at length, to my recollection, about the somewhat now iconic poster created by the one, the only. You know him, you love him, Mr. Drew Struzan.
Yes, Drew Struzan. He seems to look back on that specific poster with some fondness. They actually go and they interview Drew quite a bit. And there's a neat bonus in this book because you get to see some of the alternate pencil sketches that Struzan did for Big Trouble in Little China poster. Yeah.
I think this is my favorite part of the book because we all know that poster. And it is one of his best. I mean, hey, you want to start a fist fight? And that's that would be, what's the best Drew Struzan poster? And then it's on. But I think this is definitely one of my favorites that he's done. And but it was interesting seeing those preliminary sketches, seeing how he ultimately arrived at that poster. He, it's the different sizes of Jack. In all these sketches, it's a little Burton, a littler Burton, and the littlest Burton, and he was just, toying with these elements till he finally got it right.
Yeah, no, there's some in here that I think could have gone pretty well. I think even if they've gone with the final one.
Yeah, true.
One of the interesting things that I notice in here is that in some of the sketch versions of the posters that he does, you see Wang. Now, Wang is noticeably absent in the main poster. Yet, you see him in the other ones. I wonder if that was a decision that Fox specifically said because they didn't want to imply that Jack wasn't the main hero, which is ironic because he really isn't in the film. It kind of is Wang.
Yeah. Also, you know what I noticed for the first time? Because you have a nice graphic here of the final, but without the lettering. It looks as though one of the buttons on Jack's button-fly skin-tight jeans is undone. Yeah.
That's funny.
Now it kind of also says, "Hey, Brett, why were you looking so intently at Jack's crotch?" But I couldn't help but notice it looks like he was in a hurry to put his jeans on, possibly after they had dried.
Yeah, when they had the jeans where instead of a zipper you had buttons.
Exactly,
that was a thing back in the 80s. Yeah,
button fly jeans, and he's.
Yeah, I guess that was the only way they could fit the knife in that, huh?
Yeah, maybe that's it. Jeans that tight. How can you fit a knife in there? But I mean, also on this page you have these wonderful close-ups of Struzan's posters, so you see just added detail.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. And
it's awesome.
One of the notes that Drew Struzan says in that one is that he actually posed for Jack Burton in the poster and then just slapped on basically Kurt Russell's face as he painted that on. So that's Drew's pose right there.
I hate to ask though, are those Drew's arms? Are those Drew's arms, not Drew's arms?
I wonder.
I'm sure picking up a paintbrush, he had guns back then, and still does have guns. Drew. I mean, no disrespect, Mr. Strews, and I love your work. We love you, man. But meanwhile, there was on the next page is a bit of a discovery, and that's Brian Bysouth or Bysouth?
Bysouth, yeah. Yeah, he did the UK version of the Big Trouble poster.
Yeah, which I'd seen before, but I didn't know its origin, and that's a great looking poster too. It
is. Yeah, very, very much you see the red, gold, and green on this one.
You said there's the red, gold, yeah. It's pretty much all red, gold, and green.
Mm-hmm.
The best part is definitely Lopan coming out of the shadows.
Oh yeah, no,
very ghouly.
Yeah, very vampire-like.
Yeah, that is a glow-in-the-dark Lopan. So yeah, and so this is, you read books, you learn stuff, and Brian Bysouth,
mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to looking more at his work as soon as I find out the exact pronunciation of his name. But that's a gorgeous looking poster.
Yeah.
And then, but then meanwhile, the next page kind of goes downhill.
Yeah, the French one.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite look like Kurt Russell for that.
He looks a little inbred, to be honest. Which I suppose that could be Jack's actual problem. But if I have one little criticism of this book, I would have loved to have seen more foreign posters from other countries.
Well, it's funny you mention that, Brett. Among many of the things that I have collected over the years for the website, I have a whole section at wingkong.net where you can see, I think I have at least a dozen different movie posters from various countries, everything from Brazil to Japan to, I even think there was one from Poland that was very, very odd looking.
I was just going to ask you if you had one from Poland, because Poland always has the coolest, most abstract, really very cool posters. And yeah, Polish movie posters rock.
If I remember correctly for this one, it may have just been a white poster and it showed like these eyes and they were just like in black ink and it just said the name of the movie or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I can believe that. It's all about minimalism and maybe just one symbolic or iconic thing from the movie. And, the Polish movie posters rock. I'll just say that.
Yeah, they're definitely unique. And I do like, though, the stuff that they show for some of the Blu-ray releases. I actually hadn't seen this art before. I guess it was from a different region, but kind of neat.
Yeah, that was slick.
The whole white, yeah.
I'll give them points for that. That was good. That was good. But that French poster.
Notice there's no Harley Davidson on his hat.
You're
just
right.
A black hat.
It's just a black hat. And I thought there was something weird. Well, there's a lot that's weird about that poster. Sorry.
You should check out the one that I seem to remember from the German version of the poster. Kind of just looks like something you'd find on like a Scholastic book that you would get. It doesn't look anything like Kurt Russell. It just looks like something that was drawn for some sort of a school grade primer or something. I'll have to put a link to that up
the Hardy Boys in Big Trouble.
Yes, okay. It kind of looks like that. I'll try to put a link to it up on the truck stop and up on the notes for this episode.
Cool.
But yeah, some neat stuff for the posters. They also have some different things that they talk about the storyboards, and there's a couple of glimpses that you get of some of that. Interestingly enough, there weren't that many storyboards that were done for the film. I guess John Carpenter was not a believer in storyboards, except for the flying sword fight and a couple of the visual effects for Boss Film Studios. There's not much, but what they do have, you get to see in the book. It's pretty neat stuff.
Interesting. That kind of goes with, as I recall, what James Liu was saying, working with John Carpenter, that it was a lot of collaboration and improvisation.
Mm-hmm.
And going that way.
Yeah. I remember James was mentioning how he actually talked with the person who was doing some of the storyboards there on the set, and he
You're
was
right, yeah.
very inspired and impressed by just that whole process.
Yeah, I remember that now. Even, even stick figures,
Mhm.
even by, his own rudimentary drawing, just having it down on paper.
Mhm. And now we move on to the section of the book where we're talking about art inspired by the film. So now we're in modern times, and the first thing really to mention here is Eric Powell, who was the cover artist and writer, along with John Carpenter, of the Big Trouble in Little China comic book series, which came out in 2015. And during his interviews, it's pretty funny. He's got this very Jack Burton-esque monologue that he spoke to the developers at Boom Studios when he was trying to get the job, and it's pretty great. You'll have to check out some of the comic stuff that they've done. Eric Powell does a really good job, I think, of just getting that Jack Burton voice down in different situations.
Yeah. Reading that part of the book, I'm imagining he uses that voice when he's drawing, and it kind of carries over. So, yeah, I'm gonna do my homework and get some comics. Twist my arm. Buy comics. I suppose I could do that.
Well, it's cool. I actually was able to get some of the comics just from the library. Do you know that you can get copies? That you rent, basically ebooks from your local library. So no excuses. You can just go and check it out, and it's neat stuff.
Oh, did they have had kids already drawn stuff on the pages?
No, no, it's marker free. It's just a nice scan. I think there was even one where it lets you get the Kindle version. So that means then that you get to see the comics, and when you swipe, it actually takes you panel by panel. It's very cinematic. It's a neat way of reading comics.
Fun.
Yeah,
it's fun. Yeah, the comic art in here, Powell and so many other artists. It's definitely fun seeing a rogues gallery of Jack Burton's and Lopan's. It's everybody's take.
Mm-hmm.
And very inspired stuff.
So many different ways that they can depict all the characters in the film, everything from the ultra realistic to something more in a caricature style. It turns out that the actual comic itself is penned mostly by Brian Chirilla. He's the one who does the interior art. He's got a section in here where they sort of show his depiction of Jack Burton. And it's a very sort of caricature version, very much playing up on the comedy. It's great to see.
Yeah, I definitely have to get the comics.
Well, if you do get to read the comics, you get to find out it actually takes place exactly at the end of the movie, where the wild man shows up. Spoilers if you haven't seen it yet. The back of the truck, and his encounter with Jack, and Jack basically thinks he's going to get eaten, but no. He gets licked.
Aww.
He gets licked by the wild man, who becomes basically his pet. It turns out that because Jack defeated Lopan and the wild man was Lopan's demon, it's like the Chewbacca life debt thing. He becomes indebted to Jack. And so Jack sort of takes him under his wing. He calls him Pete because he had a dog named Pete. And then he goes to a truck stop. He buys him a trucker hat, sunglasses, and a shirt that says, "Buy me a drink and I'll tell you I'm 18." And he becomes a big character throughout the comics. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. That's perfect. Of course, now I don't have to read it.
No.
You saved me a couple of bucks. It's going to help me recover, financially from this, $2.99 thing.
Oh, you're not still sore about that $2.99 thing, are you, Brett?
No, not. We are remiss. Are we going to have a special guest soon?
We are going to have a special guest.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
Yes.
We have a guest.
This kind of just worked out. As I was reading the art, I realized that, wait a minute, I actually know somebody who did one of the cover art for Big Trouble in Little China, the comic. And we're going to bring that guest on right now. All right, and as a special bonus, I would like to introduce to the Podcast Express Dan Panosian, who did some of the cover art for the Big Trouble in Little China comic books. So welcome, Dan. Thank you very much for being on our show.
Thanks for having me, you guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I love this movie, so it's fun to talk about.
That was, I think, our first question was, just when did you first see Big Trouble? When did it start for you?
Well, I saw it let's see. I probably saw it in a theater, I'm guessing.
Cool.
Yeah, totally. So I was like, I guess a junior in high school.
So you actually saw it in the theater. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, I'm a geezer, so.
So I guess the first question is, did you get the movie when you first saw it? Because we had a lot of guests on the show before who just couldn't understand the movie at first, and then upon rewatching it, then they started sort of getting it. So what was your experience like?
I've probably seen it 50 times at least.
Wow.
So, I don't know if I always dug it. I thought it was just a great bumbling adventure. You know, he's kind of that character is just kind of, just happens into all these things, and probably like a guy like that, you imagine like, oh, well, that was that week for him, and now he's going somewhere else, and he'll, there's like 600 different little things that are happening to that guy every week that he just says, oh, that's normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From the CB Adventures of Jack Burton.
Yeah. No. And what's cool about Boom is now they're doing, an ongoing series. I think Boom is still publishing it.
Really?
Yeah. I think there's several. I don't think it was a mini series or a, just one trade paperback. They still do it.
It really is a perfect match, because when you look at Big Trouble in Little China, it's a cinematic comic book. It really has a great comic pop art feel in a lot of ways. And so just continuing it as a comic book, it's like I said, it's just like a perfect match. It just flows.
Yeah, it's very fun. From the very beginning, when he's doing that bottle trick, it's pretty funny. I mean, at that point, you already love the guy. There's something special about him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, definitely. What would you say is your favorite part of the movie?
I have to say, when everybody's in that alley and they like ride the lightning and come down into the alley. There's the three, like lightning, rain, and thunder.
Yeah, the storms
come down. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's probably my favorite. It's kind of like a holy crap moment for Jack Burton.
Yeah, so that is when the movie really takes that U-turn into craziness. There's some there's some lead in, there's some hints, but once he goes in the alley, he never really comes back until the end of the movie.
Totally.
And and it's such a mini epic. We've talked about this on the podcast. It has the feeling of a huge epic battle, but it was very tight and low budget, and a tribute to Carpenter's economy as a filmmaker.
Yeah, and of course, like all of Carpenter's films, he did the soundtrack, like the title theme music. So cool that the guys can do all those things. He was just on tour, like with all the different music that he's put together.
Yeah, it's an amazing second career, because now he's pretty much a full-time musician and loving it. From what I understand. Did you go to that show when he was on tour?
I haven't been to one of them yet, but I've always liked all the theme music he's done.
Yeah.
I have been over to his house, which is pretty cool.
Oh, you were?
Wow.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, we did some posters for the movie The Thing, and it was an anniversary. I think it was a 30-year anniversary for that film. I did a poster that turned into a T-shirt and some other things, but he signed them and I signed them, and his wife made pasta, and I was like, wow, this is just, this is fantastic. Or maybe it was chili. I don't know what it was, but I was a little starstruck. So
well, that would do it.
This is happening. Wow.
That would do it. That is so cool. So this is not your first venture into Carpenter land.
No, even with Boom Studios, when they asked me to do that cover, I would have done that cover for free because I just love the movie so much. And the opportunity to draw something like that and have it get published is kind of cool.
Had you worked with Boom Studios before on other ventures?
Yeah, I used to do covers for a book called Irredeemable, which was Mark Wade left Marvel or DC, or both at the same time. He was exclusive, I think, with Boom Studios, and his book was called Irredeemable. that he was writing, and I used to do covers for that.
So when you were asked to do the cover for Big Trouble in Little China, who initially approached you? I mean, did you get in touch with Eric Powell, or was it just some reps from Boom Studios?
No, it's just some of the editors over there.
Mm-hmm. In the book, it says something about Ross Ritchie and Matt Gagnon. Gagnon?
Well, yeah, Matt Gagnon is like their editor-in-chief, and Ross Ritchie is the publisher.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew Ross when he was an assistant editor at a company called Malibu Comics in the early 90s. And I was on a plane somewhere to a convention, and I guess he was in the seat in front of me or behind me. And I was a little bit rowdy on the airplane. I remember he wanted to kill me. So we never met. I think he didn't realize that I was there for the convention, or that's why I was on that flight. And then he told me later at the convention, he goes, "Oh my God, I wanted to kill you on that flight. You wouldn't shut up." And, and then years later, he's got his own comic book company. Super nice guy. And Matt Gagnon was working over at Meltdown Comics, which is a real popular, cool comic book store on Sunset.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was actually there there was a Star Wars Minute live show that was down at Meltdown. So I've actually been there before. Yeah, it's a cool place.
Yeah. So they hired Matt. He's just real super sharp, smart guy. And now he's the editor-in-chief over there, I believe.
What sort of guidelines were you given when you were asked to do the
I think
cover?
it's a variant cover. So it was just draw what makes you happy about that character.
Nice.
And I did, of course, you do a bunch of thumbnails, and, I had him riding in his truck. I mean, there's probably like 6 different thumbnails to come up with, but ultimately, that final moment when he's throwing a knife and you're like, is this going to work? The guy's pretty good with the knife.
Yeah, I like the fact that you have the quote, too, of one of his CB radio conversations in the background with Jack about to throw his knife.
Mm-hmm. And I think I posed for that so I could get the pose down.
Yes, the hand right there in front.
Yeah. And it's pretty realistic looking.
They also have some sort of a sketch here, I guess, of an alternate version with Jack, I guess, in the front of the truck. A couple of guys driving there.
Like Shen.
Mm-hmm.
Is he in there? Maybe.
Yeah, no, it could be. It looks like somebody. I can't tell from the sketch. Somebody looks like in a samurai type outfit.
Oh, that might be Thunder, or so I'm trying to see these guys. Rain.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys were so cool.
So when you do your art, what is your method? I mean, do you just do it literally just pen and paper and then it just goes straight to Photoshop, or how do you do these covers?
I'll do the thumbnail. They'll choose the thumbnail, or sometimes I won't give them the option. I just thumbnail something and say, this is the cover. There are 10 other thumbnails, but I chose this one. So if they really, because usually if you send in too many thumbnails, you'll inevitably draw the one that you don't want to do. That's the one they'll pick. And you're like, why did I even give that as an option? I don't want to draw that. So I give a thumbnail, they approve it. And then as you start sketching, then everything's done by hand until I start coloring it. So I'll scan in I'll pencil it, then I'll ink it, and then I'll scan that in, and then I start coloring in Photoshop. Well, there's a program called Art Rage. It's a great painting program. It's really pretty, and the colors are so lush. So I'll paint it in Art Rage, and then take that and put it into Photoshop and finish it up and add some little bells and whistles. And then it's into their deft hands to do whatever they will.
So do you have a copy of the final artwork, the sort of the large version?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. How big is the largest version that you made of this?
There's I did another poster, which I don't know if that came up, if you guys saw. And that one I did oversized. But usually a comic book page is 11 by 17. Yeah. And it fits within that space. There's art collectors that, just like people who buy the comics, there's art collectors who are just into covers and pages. But I doubt I sold it.
What did you think overall of some of the different art and covers for the comic book series? I mean, we have a great opportunity to see all of these in isolation in this Art of Big Trouble in Little China book, which we've been discussing.
There's some really cool ones. I mean, they did a great job. I think everybody's excited to work on something like that.
Well, what's really interesting is everybody's take on Jack.
Mm-hmm.
and particularly his jaw. That seems to be the overlapping theme, is Kurt Russell's jaw, and a general awe and wonder of it. It's reverence to that jaw, and that mug. I think one thing I like about yours is there's a little bit of menace there. It's that pose. I mean, it's almost like we're seeing maybe that's the dark anti-Jack. I don't know, but it's
maybe.
Love that Dutch angle and that, huge hand. It's very cool. It's very cool.
Oh, thanks. I think there's two versions of it. There's I think there's one with an all orange background, but I kind of obsessed about it a little bit. The whole thing.
But yeah, it is neat how it uses all those shadows and the sort of gray coloring over Jack, as opposed to some of the ones we see, which are much brighter in colors.
Yeah, they're a little bit more literal with the colors. That tank top of his, so I wanted you to see that orange, and it's kind of, there's a little bit of orange in the writing behind him.
But again, one thing I like about yours is the slight variation. Everybody, Big Trouble in Little China is about color, and everything's vibrant. There's a little bit of film noir to yours.
Oh, thanks.
The shadows of China in the alleys of Chinatown. So, I actually live up in San Francisco and hang out in Chinatown quite a bit. Yeah. So I can,
that's a cool area for sure.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've kind of rediscovered it in the last year since doing the podcast. I like going there at night when the crowd's gone away, and you kind of have the whole place to yourself.
I've been there where it's just empty.
Yeah, exactly. You go there at the right time.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it starts to feel like a movie set. So, very cool.
Frank Cho did a great cover. I think Adam Hughes did one too. It was really cool.
Hughes.
Yeah. Adam Hughes is awesome. Yeah. And of course, Eric Powell did. I think he did all the official covers.
Yeah, no, just the variety of the different styles is incredible. I mean, you've got the the sort of the ultra realistic versions versus the more caricatures.
Very cartoony.
Yeah, but it's cool. I especially like how they treat the Chinese wild man. I guess they call him Pete in the story, and he's got the trucker hat on and the sunglasses and the t-shirt.
Yeah, and then Brian Chirilla, I'm not sure. Never said that name out loud, so I probably butchered it. But but no, I think he does the interiors, and he kind of kills it. He just really knows how to keep that fun aspect to it.
Yeah. They spend a good number of pages in the art book just showing off some of his different artwork and the different processes of getting there. Yeah, it's very neat stuff.
Now, Dan, going back to 1986 when you first saw Big Trouble in Little China, I imagine you were also perhaps reading comic books and drawing. So what was attempting? Yeah. What were some of your early inspirations in terms of your art and what you may have been reading back then?
Art-wise, at that phase is probably anything John Byrne would do.
Mm-hmm.
And then anything George Perez would do. He was probably on New Teen Titans. John Byrne John was probably on Alpha Flight and doing Fantastic Four.
Alpha Flight, yeah.
Alpha Flight was like a set of characters he created with Chris Claremont. It's probably all John Byrne because he's Canadian and he wanted to have a Canadian super team, and they meet up with the X-Men. It's right. Issue
Marvel
121. That was the first appearance of Alpha Flight. Now I have to check that. Go online. but yeah, so mostly, of course, Frank Miller and Walt Simonson. Walt Simonson was doing Thor.
Yeah, Walt Simonson. Yeah,
that was like probably the best Thor run ever. And Frank Miller was still on writing Daredevil, and at that time, I think Klaus Janson was probably doing the full art chores. Klaus was his finisher on Daredevil. Yeah. So all the cool stuff that's in all the Netflix Daredevil stuff, that's all Frank Miller's, stuff that's spawned from that era of comics, which is kind of cool.
Oh yeah. Yeah. If I can geek out on that series for a minute, the last shot
of Daredevil season 1 when he leaps off the building and he's in that sort of cannonball pose. It's, it's
reminiscent
complete.
of that.
Yeah, it's a complete Miller kind of, in motion. So yeah, great time to be into comics, early to mid 80s. That was my high water mark too.
Yeah.
So
all right. Well, I just looked it up, by the way. I was one issue off, which I thought I was. It was issue 120 of X-Men, but they just show up on the very last page. And then issue 121 is the fighting with the X-Men for real.
We will forgive you.
Yeah.
Well, if you want, we can edit that out. So no.
Yeah, edit that out. So it was like, wow,
glaring
amazing. I knew it was 120 and not 121.
Yeah.
That was a great age of comics. It's really hard. Watchmen was coming out not too far away from that.
Right.
So it was a great time to be inspired.
Yeah. It's also the dawn of the graphic novel. You're right, because Watchmen and Dark Knight.
Yeah, well, those are all comics. I mean, that's to get all super nerdy. Like those are trade paperbacks.
Oh, you're right.
But like a true graphic novel would be the stuff that Marvel was coming out with, also in the 80s, like God Loves, Man Kills, like the X-Men story.
Yeah.
And Marvel was coming up with these one-shots, and those are officially graphic novels. But most of the stuff today that you see in comic book stores are just collected like 6 issues of a story arc. And they're hardly ever done as a one-of or one-off, I guess.
It's funny. You're right. I forgot that, those 2 books that are considered classics were originally out,
Yeah, people were waiting in the comic book stores
for
those to come out. And, if they didn't come out, wait a minute, it's supposed to be I think, Dark Knight was pretty late towards the end, like the last couple issues. It's taking them longer than they thought. I don't know about Watchmen, but
that seemed like
that was only 12 issues.
12 issues, and it was pretty much on time. So,
in my opinion, Watchmen should not have been a movie. They should have done like a HBO, 12 episode series. I think it would have been perfect because there's so much content in each one of those books, and it could have been a really cool series. You could give it the attention it really needs. Try to do some story like that in one movie is really tough.
Dan, speaking of movies, what do you think about the possibility of there being a sequel to Big Trouble in Little China? I mean, there's been talk about it with the Rock being the role of Jack Burton. I haven't heard about it in a couple of while, but
I don't know. I like The Rock, but you can't insert that guy for every single reboot of everything. He's such a likable guy. People are going to, eventually go, I don't want to see it because of that. I don't know. I heard about that too. I don't know if that's the case. I'd like to just see Kurt Russell do it.
Yeah.
Why not? See what happens to that guy.
Yeah. Take the Harrison Ford approach like they've been doing with Star Wars.
I mean, that movie has a lot of kitsch, but it's like, it's like the original Batman series. Like when I was a little kid, I thought that was a real Batman show. I didn't realize it was a comedy. The one with Adam West. But as a little kid, I thought it was a serious Batman show. And with Big Trouble in Little China, I wasn't so sophisticated that I got all the kitschiness out of it. I just, I've seen enough Bruce Lee movies and Kung Fu that I love those aspects. And, years later you watch it, what becomes charming about it is the fact that they intentionally made it kind of kitschy in spots.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Was there in your viewing history, was there a light bulb moment where you sort of, I'm picturing your transition from childhood to manhood when you realized, oh, hey, this is actually sort of a satire.
Yeah, they're poking fun at the whole genre.
Yeah.
That's what I don't know. I don't know when that occurred, but for me, that was like what makes it a movie that you can still watch to this day and enjoy because it's not taking itself so seriously.
Yeah.
Some of these action movies or stuff from the 80s, another favorite movie of mine was Cobra. So, and I still love, there's still parts of it that are just so visually cool, but we watch Cobra and you're like, oh God, that actually doesn't hold up,
no.
at all.
What's the tagline? You're the disease and I'm
On the
medicine.
cure.
Oh, God.
Yeah. But I like the villain in Cobra. He's just, there's no motive. There's nothing he wants. He just hates law and order. He just like embraces chaos, and he's like a cult, and they're just in kind of a warehousey dungeon thing, and they're just clanging axes together, just chanting, like revving themselves up for mayhem for no reason whatsoever. Like there's no clear motivation to why these guys just want to cause trouble.
Just fracas seeking is the best type of motivation.
Fracas
Yeah,
seekers.
it's like we hate society and law. Thank God for Marion Cobretti. But I did want that car of his. He had a 1950 Mercury that he drove that was lowered and had a chop top.
I forgot about the Merc.
I was really distressed in the film when it got trashed. I'm like, how could you trash a car like that even in a movie? So distressed about that.
Well, that's, we could talk. A separate subject is the death of cars. When James Bond's Aston Martin blows up, and
it's so short lived.
Yeah, and no, not the car.
Yeah, he just got it.
Yeah, or some other car deaths. Oh, Mad Max's Interceptor.
Yeah, that's sad. That's one of the best things. I really always wanted a car that had that little button that you could turn the supercharger on and off at will.
Oh yeah,
and they do make it. It's I think it's an Eaton supercharger. There's only one kind that does that, but it's so rare and it's not really a necessary component to. I researched it, as you can tell. I really desperately wanted that.
I should get you in touch with the Reels and Wheels guys. There's a whole podcast. They just talk about cars and movies.
Oh, I have a cool 67 Firebird that I bought a long time ago, and then a buddy of mine got it on overhaul, and now it's a whole different animal that I can't even understand. It's just it's the car. It's too much car for me. Jack Burton can handle it. I can't handle this car. My own car terrifies me. Jack
Burton couldn't handle it. He would say he could handle it.
He'd crash it. You're right. Yeah. He crashed the car.
Yeah. He put it in reverse. I think we can picture the scene where, he gets behind the wheels, piece of cake. And then Kurt Russell would do one of those like double takes like that.
Yeah. He's trying to impress Kim Cattrall and back up right into the wall.
Exactly.
Well, Dan, I wanted to thank you for taking the time to talk with us on 5 Minutes of Trouble, and we appreciate all the work.
I think it went over.
Yeah,
no, over the 5 minutes. So I apologize.
No, well, the episodes can last more than 5 minutes. We were just talking about them 5 minutes at a time. So we're happy to have you on, and for everybody out there, please be sure to check out the official art of Big Trouble in Little China, which features all the different covers that were done for the comic book, including the one done by Dan Panosian. And is there anything else that you'd like to kind of plug, stuff that you're working on right now, Dan?
Well, there's a couple things I think you know about, Josh, but I have a comic book that's going to be debuting at the New York Comic-Con in October. I'm not even sure I can say who the publisher is, but it's something I've been working on and off for at least 2 years. Mm-hmm. So I'm super excited to have that come out. It's 6 issues, and then it'll be a trade paperback at some point. And other than that, I just do I still do covers for Marvel and DC all the time. There's some special covers that are coming out for Comic-Con from DC that I just finished up.
Yeah, very cool.
But other than that, not a whole lot. Just drawing comic books.
Excellent.
It's a strange life.
That's a good way to live.
Yeah.
Well, I'll ask, what about going to Boom and pitching a Cobra reboot?
Oh,
I'm sure they would do it in a second. Those guys just pick whatever they want and just have fun with it. I would totally do covers for a Cobra reboot. I'd love to draw Stallone. He's hard to draw. All these guys. Kurt Russell's actually hard to draw. I'm surprised at how difficult. Yeah. I mean, the more you cartoon him, you make it a caricature, it becomes a little easier. But to actually get his likeness where he's recognizable, it's not that easy. And Stallone looks like he'd be easy because of his mouth structure, but it's a little hard to get him to.
So we definitely want to stay away from a Tango and Cash comic book then.
Oh yeah, that'd be
them,
like
yeah.
kryptonite
Tango
for me.
and
How could I do it? I just faint. I couldn't handle it.
Yeah. Bad idea for a number of reasons, but mostly the two Jaws. Maybe that was why the movie tanked. Those
It was
two
just too much.
People couldn't take it.
Yeah.
Lightsabers could have come out of those chins.
Well, you guys should pitch the Cobra comic, and then if that's a success, then obviously Tango and Cash is next.
Nice.
Very good.
Nice.
All right. Well, thank you again very much, Dan. Hope you have a good rest of your weekend.
Yeah.
You too, you guys. Have fun.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Talking with both of you.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan.
Well, that was fun.
Yeah. No, pretty cool that we were able to get Dan to come on and talk about his experience working on the comic and just thoughts about Big Trouble in general.
It's amazing. Suddenly he was there, and the next minute he was gone.
Yes. Like magic.
Yeah. It's poof.
So that was a little bit of a treat, but we still have a couple of other things to kind of wrap up with this book and maybe some other last thoughts then.
I just hope you'll still buy it, even though we've talked about it end to end. I mean, we've described it, but you still haven't seen it. Lots of neat pictures. Lots of neat pictures.
Well, that's the one thing that you can't quite get in this podcasting medium. You got to be able to get the book to see the visuals. You can only imagine all our great descriptions and everything we're talking about.
There's only so much we can do. It's up to you to go out and get the book. So
right,
we're doing our best here.
But the last 3 sections in the book talk about some of the toys, among other things, some of the collectibles that were made. And, I remember back in 2002 when they announced that they were doing Big Trouble in Little China toys. It kind of came out of nowhere because Big Trouble kind of fell off the map. And I guess people were still kind of watching the video and stuff. But then I found out that N2 Toys, never heard of them before, they were coming out with these non-articulated figures and, of some of the major characters. So I ended up picking them up. All of them up at the time. I don't think they sold very many of them. They talk about it, but they don't actually show it. Do you remember any of the figures back in 2002 before all these Funko stuff and these vinyl figures?
Yeah, I have a vague recollection of that. Not real clear, but like you, a bit surprised. It came out of left field.
Yeah, and I think because of that, though. If you actually own any of these, especially if it's still in the box, they're pretty valuable. I've seen the Jack Burton one alone going for like $500 on eBay a couple of years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Actually, no, they're not valuable at all. They're worthless. I will give you $2.99. Very old Jack Burton non-articulated figure from, 15, 16 years ago. Why would you want that? You can get a new one that's better. So I'll give you $2.99.
Well, you just got some of the characters recently. I remember you posted a couple of those up on the truck stop. Or at least you were talking about it. Yeah, those are what are they called? They're called the reaction version of them. And they're supposed to resemble some of the old Kenner Toy Star Wars figures with sort of limited movement and stuff. What'd you think of those toys, Brent?
Oh, they're very cool. Very colorful. Yeah, they had a certain let me go back a bit, and when we were talking about action figures today in the toy market, some of them are so detailed. It's a bit mind-boggling. So yeah, these were a pleasant, as you were alluding to, a pleasant throwback to the simplicity of say a Kenner action figure. And as I recall, when these Big Trouble characters came out, it was kind of their late. It seems like every 3 months, every 6 months, they were doing a different movie. Because I believe they did Army of Darkness characters or figures.
Oh, nice.
And the Rocketeer. Yeah, they definitely did.
They did the Rocketeer?
Yeah, the Rocketeer. I'm pretty sure they did a Rocketeer, and because I was thinking about getting that one.
Oh, now we know what to get Jim O'Kane for Christmas if he doesn't have it already.
He's already got it.
I'm sure
He's already got it.
Yeah.
Tell us the serial number. Hey, Jim.
Although those are the reaction figures.
Yeah, the reaction figures.
But they also have those the Funko Pop vinyl figures.
Those are fun.
Those are really neat too. I never actually picked up any of those, but I've seen people having many different types from various movies and films and stuff on their desks at work. And it's neat to see that Big Trouble got the treatment as well.
Yeah, we have a couple of Funko Gremlins.
Oh.
And they make very good Gremlins.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, very fun figures, and they kind of transcend because they look like toys that we would have had as kids. Very sort of maybe Fisher Price, that very simple aspect of them, or Playmobil or something. But made for adults. Hey, here's a question for you, because you have two little people in your household, two tiny. A 4-year-old person and a 2-year-old person.
Oh, she's 5 now. Yeah,
she's 5. That's big. Do you let any of them play with your Big Trouble in Little China action figures, or do they have their own that you've set aside?
Yeah, you know what? I don't think I've shown them yet to Ilana. I'll have to at least show them, but I don't know if she's going to find it that interesting because you can't move them around. I think she'd probably find some of the new ones a little more up her alley.
Okay.
Yeah, I can tell you though that I certainly collected a lot of the Star Wars action figures, not from the original back in the late 70s, early 80s, but when they did the reissue, this was back when I was in like late high school, early college years.
Yep.
So I have several boxes full of Star Wars figures, and my kids love playing with those.
Oh, that's fun.
That's kind of fun just to see their use again.
So you're basically playing Star Wars with your kids with your old action figures.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
But you can tell where a movie's at in pop culture by its toys. And there are a lot of cool Big Trouble in Little China toys. So this movie's here to stay.
Yeah.
As if we didn't know that already. But yeah, you can gauge the popularity by toys, so it's in a good place.
Yeah, and the detail that they put in, even just these vinyl figures, is quite cool. The storms themselves, they have all their weapons, complete with the sides, the back scratchers, the spinning forks. It's all there.
It's all there.
Yeah,
I'm just glad that unlike say the toys of my childhood, where all the accessories were sold separately. I'd still be looking for whirling knives, and although if the one thing I miss about the toys, say with Big Trouble in Little China, they would come up with the action play sets that have nothing to do with the movie. That would be some like completely fabricated offshoot. It's the
also instead of like having the Pork Chop Express, suddenly Jack would have some sort of a charter plane or something that you never actually get to see.
Couldn't you picture the toy company coming up with, like the one thing you don't see Jack have is a motorcycle. So it'd be like, the Jack Burton, action bust out cycle that, that fires little foam missiles. Right. Yeah. You see it.
That reminds me of like Mask. Do you remember those toys at all?
Fighting crime in the future. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was Mask, or was that? But yeah, no, that was another cartoon. But yeah, no, I remember Mask. Yeah, and of course G.I. Joe, and what I remember from the toys of that era. Yeah, you'd have like a really cool motorcycle, but the figures were not articulated so they could sit on the cycle. So it would often be, you'd sort of like be laying backwards, like it was like a hammock.
Yeah.
It was like
it's got to straddle the legs backwards like that.
Yeah. It's an attack cycle and a recliner. You can fight your enemies, and it's good for your lower back. So there you go.
But compare some of those toys with what they have from the Sideshow Jack Burton figure. That's the one that costs about $240. I mean, the detail is just incredible. It's not a toy; it's a sculpt. And some people, they have to have the best, and well, that's the best you're probably going to get for Jack Burton.
It's not good enough for me.
No.
No.
What's missing?
Some actual DNA from Kurt Russell.
Comes with real strands of hair directly from the head of Kurt Russell.
Yeah. Yeah. A piece of a fingernail. It's anything, but it has to be some actual DNA mixed into my action figure. That to me is the added realism.
Well, from the detail that you see in this figure, though, I mean, it almost feels like you got some DNA in there. It's amazing stuff.
Actually, like I think when I first opened the book to that page, I thought, that's a nice picture of Kurt Russell. Oh, wait a minute, that's not a headshot. Well, it is a headshot, but it's not his head. It's a clone of his head. So yeah, insanely good detail.
Mm-hmm.
If you could design a Big Trouble in Little China toy, here we go. What toy would that be? Would it be the Lords of Death Trans Am? What is missing in your toy collection that you would like to have?
Oh, I would say the Pork Chop Express. If you could have one that would be like a perfect sculpt of the Pork Chop Express, that would be an awesome thing to just have on your desk.
Nice. And the doors open and you can fit the action figures in it. And awesome.
And it would have to have little buttons that would have sounds from the film. Have the horn playing and have a sample of Jack saying, come on, what the hell?
Oh, now that's a toy. That's a toy.
Yes.
Now, one little thing I would like to add to it would be a little button you push and the Yeren pops out of the back.
Oh, nice. Yes, of course. No, it would have to come with the Yeren figure.
Yeah, absolutely. Pete Yeren.
Pete Yeren. Yeah, the only other really things to talk about in here, there is a novel apparently that had some illustrations, Big Trouble in Mother Russia, and I don't know very much about it, but it sounds entertaining.
I'm just glad that the franchise is continuing without another movie. In some ways, I'd rather see just comics and graphic novels and toys than necessarily a new movie.
Well, though, if I remember right, just recently there was some sort of an announcement of, I don't know if it's going to be just a comic or may even be considered for a screenplay, which would be a Jack Burton adventure that takes place in modern times.
Yeah.
Like Old Man Jack, was that
Old Man Jack, yeah. And as I understand it, that's a screenplay.
Wow.
And last year when we were doing the show, we talked often about the rumor that The Rock was attached to a Big Trouble remake. And
yes, that's right.
We love The Rock, and heck, jumping ahead, maybe The Rock could be in this, but I really love the idea of go to the original.
I'm sure Kurt Russell wouldn't mind to, try to take that role again. He seems to have a lot of affection for Jack Burton.
Yeah, and an old Jack Burton would be even funnier. Because and he's really awkward.
I mean, the only other thing to talk about really is the art of Mondo. There's a bunch of eclectic posters for Big Trouble in Little China. My note was that I'd actually seen some of these images before. Somebody had sent me the Alamo Drafthouse 2007 poster. This is that sort of wacky-looking red, white, and gold poster of all the different characters. It's near the back of the book, but it's really cool.
Yeah.
Something like you would see at like a Woodstock convention. It's that type.
Completely. And it kind of reminded me of street art. It just, again, it sort of legitimizes Big Trouble's place in popular culture.
Yeah.
When you're seeing it on a wall spray painted, then it's here to stay. Like
you've seen those posters that they have of Andre the Giant, where it says obey and
right.
It says like his stats and stuff, and you pretty much see it slapped almost all over in major cities. I wonder if they would ever do something like that where it would show like Egg Shen or Jack Burton or something, and it would say something like that. And if anyone would get it.
I think it's even better if it's vague enough, you just see it and you go, aha. It's the ultimate in joke.
Yeah. But yeah, that's basically all I have on the book. A lot of stuff there, good stuff. The Official Art of Big Trouble in Little China by Tara Bennett and Paul Terry. You can pick this up on Amazon or wherever good Big Trouble in Little China books are sold.
Go to your local Big Trouble in Little China supply store and stock up. I believe it's only 160 days now until Christmas. Rush in. Do yourself a favor. Buy the book. Again, we're not making a penny off of this. We really like the book.
Yeah.
And we really like talking about the book. Hell, we really like talking.
Yeah. But it was cool that we were able to come back and do a couple of bonus episodes for this. Kind of wraps things up a little bit more. And if there are going to be any other Big Trouble in Little China related stuff in the future, we might maybe drop an episode here or there. We'll see.
We're on it. We're constantly vigilant.
Though we still have on our radar a possible visit into other dimensions. That isn't something that we've forgotten about. So
more than 7 dimensions, and
yes,
this is coming as soon as we get a few things cleared off our desks. But yeah, we do intend to follow up on that, our dearland loyal listeners.
Yeah, no, looking forward to that. That'll be an interesting one. It's been a while since I've seen Buckaroo Banzai, so I'll have to watch it again, and I think you'll probably be more the expert on this than I will. So we'll see what I have to contribute on this one.
Oh, any contribution is most welcome.
Oh, thank you.
Let me get this knot out of my tongue that has been plaguing me all night. So we're recording this at 3 a.m.
Well, it's 3 a.m. somewhere.
It's 3 a.m. somewhere. Yeah, somewhere right now, Amagwai is having a midnight snack. So, but I guess that's it for now. But stay tuned. You may hear from us in the near future. We'll send out the jack signal if anything comes up. But we thank you for your attention. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you. Just some final things here. If you want, please check us out at 5minutestrouble.com. You can also visit us on Facebook at 5 Minutes of Trouble. We also have our truck stop, 5 Minutes of Trouble truck stop, where you can discuss all things Big Trouble in Little China. Check us out on Twitter at 5 Minutes Trouble. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You wanna send us home on the Podcast Express?
Yeah, let's get rid of these smoking jackets and these pipes, and put our trucker caps back on and hit the road. So, let's see here. I can't remember which one is reverse. Well, we'll just do it. So, here we go.
All right. There we go. And this is the Podcast Express signing off. Thank you for listening to 5 Minutes of Trouble.
Indeed.
Indeed.